When Elon Musk offered his 77-year-old father $1 billion, enough money to buy mansions, yachts, and anything his heart desired, Elon Musk said no. The refusal shocked the world's richest man. But what his father asked for instead wasn't something money could buy. It wasn't stock options or luxury cars or a private island. It was something far more valuable. Something Elon hadn't given anyone in 30 years. And hidden behind that simple request was a secret that would change everything. A truth Errol had been keeping that made every single moment precious. This is the story of 12 Saturdays that healed a broken family and revealed what truly matters when time is running out. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Elon Musk's study in Pretoria, South Africa. At 77 years old, he sat in his worn leather chair, surrounded by yellowing photographs and old engineering blueprints that covered nearly every surface. The room smelled of old books and machine oil, a scent that had defined his life. His phone buzzed on the desk. The screen lit up with a name he hadn't seen in 6 months. Elon. Errol's hand trembled as he reached for it. He let it ring twice more, steadying his breath before answering. "Hello? Dad?" Elon's voice came through clearly, but there was something different about it. Softer, almost apologetic. "Do you have a moment?" Errol glanced at the empty room around him. Moments were all he had these days. "Yes, I have time." There was a pause. Errol could hear background noise, the hum of activity, voices in the distance. Elon was probably at SpaceX or Tesla, surrounded by engineers and assistants, squeezing this call between 1,000 more important things. "I've been thinking," Elon continued, "about us, about everything." Errol said nothing. He'd learned long ago that silence was sometimes the best response. "I want to do something for you," Elon said. "Something significant. You're my father, and I want to make sure you're taken care of, properly." "I'm fine, Elon." "Dad, please, just listen." Elon's voice grew firmer, the way it did when he was trying to solve a problem. "Name your price, anything you want. A house, a new car, investments. I can set you up with enough money that you'll never have to worry about anything again. Just name it." Errol's eyes drifted to the photograph on his desk. It was old. The colors faded to warm yellows and browns. In it, a young boy, maybe 8 years old, stood beside him at a small airfield outside Pretoria. The boy's hand was clasped tightly in his father's, his eyes wide with wonder as he looked up at a small airplane. Little Elon, before the world knew his name, before everything changed. "Elon," Errol said quietly, his voice catching. "There's only one thing I want from you. Name it, whatever it is." Errol picked up the photograph, running his thumb across the glass. In the picture, they were both smiling. When had they stopped smiling at each other like that? "It's not money," Errol said. There was confusion in Elon's silence. "Then what?" Elon asked. Errol felt his throat tighten. He'd rehearsed this moment in his mind 100 times, but now that it was here, the words felt impossibly heavy. And he thought about the heart medication on his nightstand, the doctor's appointments he'd been attending alone, the newspapers he collected with Elon's face on them, reading about his son's achievements like a stranger learning about a celebrity. "Dad? Are you still there?" "I'm here." Errol set down the photograph and closed his eyes. "Elon, I want something from you, but I'm afraid you won't give it to me." "Try me," Elon said. "I just offered you anything. What could I possibly refuse?" Errol opened his eyes and stared at the photograph again. That little boy holding his hand. That little boy who used to spend every Saturday in the garage with him. asking endless questions about how things worked, dreaming about stars and rockets and impossible things. "The thing I want," Errol said slowly, "isn't something you can buy." "What is it?" Errol took a deep breath. "I'll tell you. But first, do you remember the Magaliesberg Mountains?" Silence. Then, barely a whisper. "Yes." "Good," Errol said. "Because that's where this begins." Pretoria, South Africa, 1980. Every Saturday morning started the same way. 8-year-old Elon would wake before sunrise, too excited to sleep, and tiptoe down the hallway to his father's bedroom door. He'd knock 3 times, their special signal, and wait. "Come in, son," Errol's voice would call out, already awake. Those Saturdays were sacred. While other kids played soccer or watched cartoons, Elon spent his weekends in the garage with his father, hands covered in grease, learning how the world worked one engine part at a time. "Hand me the wrench," Errol said. Lying under an old Toyota they were rebuilding together. "The bigger one." Elon searched through the toolbox, his small fingers wrapping around the cold metal. He passed it down to his father. "Good boy. Now, come here and look at this." Errol slid out from under the car, his face smeared with oil. "See this part? This is the carburetor. It mixes air and fuel so the engine can breathe. An engine is like a person, Elon. It needs the right balance to survive." Elon nodded, his eyes wide with fascination. He loved these moments, just him and his dad, solving puzzles together. "Can we go to the mountains today?" Elon asked hopefully. Errol smiled, wiping his hands on a rag. "Finish helping me here, and we'll go this afternoon. Deal?" "Deal!" By evening, they were parked on a dirt road in the Magaliesberg Mountains, just outside Pretoria. The sky was turning purple and orange as the sun set. Errol spread a blanket on the hood of their car, and they both climbed up, lying back to watch the stars appear. "There," Errol pointed. "That's the Southern Cross. And over there, see those 3 bright stars in a row? That's Orion's belt." "It's so far away," Elon whispered, his voice filled with wonder. 40 light years, Errol said. "But distance doesn't matter if you're determined enough. You want to know a secret?" Elon turned to look at his father. "What?" "If you want to touch the stars, you first need to understand what you're standing on. You need to know how things work. Engines, mathematics, physics. Everything builds on everything else. Master the basics, and you can go anywhere." Elon looked back at the stars. "Even space?" "Even space," Errol said, ruffling his son's hair. "Especially space, if that's what you dream about." From the doorway of their home, May Musk watched them leave each Saturday with a gentle smile. She saw the bond between father and son, the way Elon hung on Errol's every word, the way Errol's eyes lit up when teaching his brilliant boy. But she also saw the cracks forming in their marriage, the arguments, the growing distance. 1 year later, those cracks became a canyon. The divorce was messy. Elon was 9 years old when his parents sat him down and explained that they wouldn't be living together anymore. He had to choose: stay with his mother in Pretoria or go with his father. "Where's Dad going?" Elon asked, his voice small. "Not far," May said gently. "Just across town." Elon thought about the Saturdays, the garage, the mountains, the stars. I want to stay with Dad," he said quietly. May's face fell, but she nodded. She understood. Errol had been Elon's hero, his teacher, his whole world. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this decision would haunt both father and son for decades to come. The Saturdays continued for a while. Elon still knocked 3 times on Errol's bedroom door. They still rebuilt engines and watched the stars. But something had changed. Errol remarried. The garage filled with new projects that didn't include Elon. The trips to the mountains became less frequent. By the time Elon was 17, the Saturdays had stopped completely. One morning in 1989, Elon knocked on his father's door with a backpack over his shoulder. "I'm leaving," he said, "for Canada, to make something of myself." Errol looked at his son, tall now, almost a man, and felt pride mixed with something else. Something like loss. "Go chase your dreams," Errol said. "Show the world what you can do." Elon nodded, turned, and walked away. Neither of them knew it would be 30 years before they'd share a real conversation again. Neither of them knew how much they'd both regret letting those Saturdays slip away. 1989, Toronto, Canada. Elon stepped off the bus in Toronto with $200 in his pocket and a head full of dreams. He was 17 years old, alone, and terrified. But he'd never admit that to anyone, especially not to his father. He found work on a farm, shoveling grain in 100-degree heat. At night, he slept in a youth hostel, surrounded by strangers. He thought about calling home, hearing his father's voice, asking for advice. But pride stopped him, and he needed to prove he could do this alone. Back in Pretoria, Errol waited by the phone. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. No call came. Errol told himself Elon was just busy, adjusting to his new life. But deep down, the silence hurt more than he wanted to admit. He'd remarried, started a new chapter of his life. Maybe Elon didn't need him anymore. Maybe that was for the best. 1995, Palo Alto, California. Elon had made it to Stanford University, but he lasted only 2 days before dropping out. He had a bigger idea, an internet company called Zip2. He poured everything into it, sleeping in the office, showering at the YMCA, surviving on oranges and hot dogs because they were cheap. Some nights, hunched over his computer at 3 in the morning, he'd remember his father's words. "Master the basics, and you can go anywhere." He wondered if Errol knew what he was doing, if he was proud, if he even cared. But Elon didn't call. Errol didn't call. The silence between them grew deeper. 2002, Los Angeles. The check was for $180 million. Elon stared at it, his share from selling PayPal to eBay. He was 31 years old and had more money than he'd ever imagined. Enough to retire. Enough to do anything. He thought about sending something to his father. A wire transfer. A gift. Something to show that he'd made it. But then he remembered the tabloid headlines from a few years earlier. His father's new relationship. The whispers. The judgment. Elon folded the check and put it in his pocket. His father would probably just criticize how he spent it anyway. In Pretoria, so Errol clipped another article from the newspaper. PayPal sold for $1.5 billion. There was a photo of Elon, looking thin and exhausted, but triumphant. Errol added it to a growing pile in his desk drawer. Articles about Zip2, about PayPal, about something new called SpaceX. He kept them all, read them over and over, showed them to anyone who'd listen. "That's my son," he'd say, pointing at the pictures. "I taught him everything about engineering." But he never picked up the phone. 2008. The darkest year, Tesla was dying. SpaceX had failed 3 times. Elon was going through a divorce. He was broke, borrowing money from friends just to make payroll. He sat alone in his empty apartment on Christmas Eve, staring at his phone. His finger hovered over his father's contact. One call. That's all it would take. But what would he say? "Dad," I'm failing. Everything's falling apart. I need help." No, Elon Musk didn't ask for help, especially not from Errol. He put the phone down and went back to work. The fourth SpaceX launch succeeded. Tesla found new investors. Elon survived. But the moment when he almost called his father, that moment stayed with him like a ghost. 2018. The public breaking. The tabloid headline screamed across the internet. Errol Musk's shocking relationship. Elon's phone exploded with messages. Reporters, friends, people asking for comment about his father's personal life. In an interview, exhausted and frustrated, Elon finally said what he'd been holding back for years. "He's a terrible human being. You have no idea." The words went viral. They were quoted everywhere. Elon regretted them almost immediately, but they couldn't be taken back. In Pretoria, Errol read the interview on his computer. Each word felt like a punch to the chest. He sat at his desk, surrounded by those newspaper clippings, his son's achievements, carefully preserved for decades. He pulled out a piece of paper and began to write. "Dear Elon, I saw what you said. Maybe you're right. Maybe I am terrible. But I want you to know that I've watched every launch, read every article. I've been proud of you every single day, even when I didn't know how to tell you. I'm sorry for my mistakes. I'm sorry I wasn't the father you needed. Love, Dad." He folded the letter, put it in an envelope, and placed it in his desk drawer with all the others he'd written over the years. Unsent. Always unsent. Because what if Elon threw it away? What if he read it and laughed? Some silences become so deep that breaking them feels impossible. To 2020. Alone. The heart attack hit Errol at 2 in the morning. He managed to call an ambulance, gasping for breath, clutching his chest. In the hospital, lying in the ICU with tubes and wires attached to his body, he stared at the ceiling and thought about those Saturdays in the mountains. The nurse asked if there was anyone she should call. "My son," Errol whispered. "What's his number?" Errol closed his eyes. "Never mind. He's busy." Elon never knew his father almost died that night, and Errol never told him. October 2023, Pretoria. 3 years after the heart attack, Errol sat in his study, older and more tired than ever. The medication bottles lined his bathroom shelf like little soldiers. The doctor's latest words echoed in his mind. "Your heart is weaker, Mr. Musk. You need to reduce stress. Take better care of yourself." But how do you reduce stress when your greatest pain is the silence between you and your son? The phone call that October afternoon came as a surprise. "Dad." Elon's voice was different this time. Not the clipped, businesslike tone from their rare conversations over the years. This was softer, uncertain. "Do you have a moment?" Errol set down the engineering magazine he'd been pretending to read. "Yes, I have time." He heard Elon take a deep breath on the other end of the line. Background noise hummed. People talking, keyboards clicking. Elon was probably at Tesla's headquarters in Austin, or maybe SpaceX in California. His son was everywhere these days, except where Errol was. "I've been thinking," Elon continued, "about us, about everything that's happened." Errol's grip tightened on the phone, and he'd imagined this conversation 1,000 times. Apologies, arguments, reconciliation, but he never expected it to actually happen. "I want to do something for you," Elon said. "Something significant." "Elon, you don't need to." "Please, Dad, just listen." There was an urgency in his voice. "You're 77 years old. You're my father, and I've been thinking about what I can do to make things better. Between us. Errol waited, his heart beating faster than it should. I want to give you financial security, Elon said. Real security. I'm talking about $1 billion in Tesla stock. Maybe more. You'd never have to worry about anything again. New house, healthcare, travel, whatever you want. Just name it, and it's yours. $1 billion. The number hung in the air like smoke. Errol looked around his modest study, and the same house he'd lived in for decades, the same furniture, the same photographs gathering dust. What would he do with $1 billion? Buy a mansion? He was too old to enjoy it. A yacht? He'd rather stay on solid ground. Travel the world? The only place he wanted to be was in the past, back when his son still knocked 3 times on his bedroom door. Dad? Are you there? I'm here, Errol said quietly. I'm just thinking. Think about it, Elon urged. Seriously, I can have my financial advisors set everything up. You'd be one of the wealthiest men in South Africa. You could do anything. Errol's eyes drifted to the photograph on his desk. 8-year-old Elon holding his hand at the airfield. Both of them smiling at something simple. An airplane, a cloud, the future. When did money become the language his son spoke? Elon, Errol said slowly, do you remember the Magaliesberg Mountains? There was a pause. Errol could almost hear his son's mind shifting gears, confused by the change in topic. Yes, Elon finally said, his voice quieter. I remember. Do you remember what we did there? Another pause. We looked at the stars. We did more than that, Errol said, his voice thick with emotion. We talked. We dreamed. We were father and son, not businessman, and whatever I am to you now. Dad, I don't understand what this has to do with everything, Errol interrupted. It has everything to do with it. He stood up, his legs shaky, and walked to the window. Outside, Pretoria sprawled in the afternoon sun. Somewhere out there was the road to those mountains. The same road they'd driven every Saturday, singing off-key to the radio. He's stopping for cold drinks at the same gas station. You've given the world electric cars, Errol said. You're sending rockets to space. You're connecting the planet with internet satellites. You're doing things I taught you to dream about all those years ago. Then, let me give something back to you, Elon said. Please. But you haven't given me what I've been waiting for. Silence. What? Elon asked, confusion clear in his voice. What could you possibly want that I haven't offered? Errol felt tears building behind his eyes. He was 77 years old, too old to cry, but the words came anyway. Time, Elon. I want time. I don't understand. You've given me money before. Small amount, sure, but you've sent checks. You've made sure I'm taken care of from a distance. Errol's voice cracked. But you haven't given me yourself, and you haven't given me a single Saturday in 30 years. He heard Elon's breath catch on the other end. $1 billion can buy me a castle, Elon, but it can't buy me back the years we lost. It can't buy me a conversation with my son. It can't buy me one more trip to those mountains where you used to ask me about the stars. Dad, I don't want your money, Errol said, the words pouring out now like water through a broken dam. I want 12 Saturdays, one a month for a year, no phones, no assistants, no billion-dollar deals, just you and me like it used to be. That's what I want. The silence on the other end stretched so long that Errol thought the call had dropped. Elon? Are you still there? I'm here, Elon whispered. Can you give me that? Can you afford 12 Saturdays? 30 seconds of silence felt like 30 years. So I'll call you back, Elon finally said, his voice strange and tight. The line went dead. Errol stood holding the phone, staring at the photograph of his little boy, and wondered if he'd just asked for the one thing even the richest man in the world couldn't afford to give. 13. Texas. Tesla headquarters. Elon stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, the phone still pressed against his ear, even though the call had ended minutes ago. 12 Saturdays. His calendar sprawled across 3 screens on his desk, every hour color-coded, every meeting essential. SpaceX launches, Tesla production reviews, board meetings, engineering reviews, interviews, court dates for the Twitter, now X, lawsuits. His assistant, Jennifer, had once told him that his calendar was booked out for the next 8 months, every single day, including weekends. "Mr. Musk?" Jennifer knocked on the door. "Your 3 o'clock is waiting." Elon didn't turn around. "Cancel it." "Sir?" "Cancel it. Cancel everything for the rest of the day." Jennifer hesitated, then quietly closed the door. Elon looked down at the city of Austin below. Thousands of people going about their lives. He'd built an empire. Electric cars that were changing transportation. Rockets that were making humanity multiplanetary. Satellites bringing internet to remote corners of Earth. But he couldn't remember the last time he'd spent a full day with anyone who wasn't an employee or a business partner. His father wanted 12 Saturdays. Just 12 days out of 365. It sounded so simple, so small. So why did it feel impossible? Elon sat at his desk and opened his laptop. He pulled up his calendar for the next year. Saturday after Saturday filled with obligations. A product launch in Berlin. A Starship test in Boca Chica. Emergency meetings. Crisis management. He started counting how many Saturdays were actually free. 0. Not a single one. He thought about his own children. 12 of them now, scattered across different homes, different mothers. When was the last time he'd spent a full, uninterrupted day with any of them? His phone buzzed. A text from his brother Kimball. "Mom told me you called Dad. Everything okay?" Elon stared at the message. Even his family heard about his life through gossip and updates, not from him directly. He typed back, "He asked me for something I don't know if I can give." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Kimball's response, "Money? No, to time." The dots stopped. No response came. Elon pulled up a photo on his phone. It was from 2 months ago, a rare Sunday when he'd taken his younger children to the SpaceX facility. They'd watched a static fire test together. In the photo, his daughter's face was lit up with wonder, the same expression he must have had as a child watching the stars with his father. How many more moments like that would he miss while chasing Mars? His father's words echoed in his mind. "You've given the world electric cars, space travel, internet in the sky, but you haven't given me what I've been waiting for." Elon closed his eyes and remembered. Age 8, lying on the hood of the car in the Magaliesberg Mountains, his father pointing out constellations, the smell of the African night, dry grass and distant fires. His father's voice, "Master the basics. And you can go anywhere." He'd gone everywhere, except back. The night stretched on. Elon sat alone in his office while the building emptied around him. He pulled up articles about himself on his computer. Elon Musk, the man who works 100-hour weeks. How Elon Musk manages 5 companies simultaneously. The loneliest billionaire. That last headline made him pause. He clicked it. The article talked about his failed marriages, his complicated relationships with his children, his admission in interviews that he was often alone, despite being surrounded by thousands of employees. One quote jumped out at him, his own words from an interview last year. "I'd rather work than do almost anything else. Work is where I find meaning. But sitting here now, in an empty office at midnight, that meaning felt hollow. His father was 77 years old. The heart attack 3 years ago that Elon didn't know about. He'd found out later through Kimball. How much time did his father have left? How many more chances would there be? 12 Saturdays. His father had asked for 12 Saturdays to rebuild 30 years of silence. Elon pulled out his phone and stared at his father's contact. His thumb hovered over the call button. What would he say? Yes, I'll give you the Saturdays. But could he actually follow through? Could the man who'd promised to put humans on Mars keep a promise to show up 12 times for his own father? What if he failed? What if something came up? A rocket explosion? A production crisis? A lawsuit? What if he disappointed his father one more time? Maybe it was safer to say no, to keep the distance, and to send the $1 billion instead. At least money was reliable. Money didn't require him to change. Money didn't ask him to face the years of hurt between them. But as Elon sat there in the dark, staring at that photograph of his 8-year-old self holding his father's hand, he realized something. His father hadn't asked for 12 Saturdays. He'd asked for one last chance. And Elon had to decide if he was brave enough to take it. His finger touched the screen. The phone began to ring. November 2023, Pretoria, South Africa. Errol heard the knock on his front door at exactly 8 a.m. on the first Saturday of November. 3 knocks. His breath caught in his throat. He hadn't heard that pattern in over 30 years. When he opened the door, Elon stood there in jeans and a black t-shirt. No security guards, no assistants. Just his son, looking tired and uncertain, with a small backpack over his shoulder. "Hi, Dad," Elon said quietly. Errol felt his eyes water. "You came." "I said I would." Elon shifted his weight, looking almost like a nervous teenager. "I flew in last night. Drove myself from the hotel. No one knows I'm here." For a moment, they just stood there. 2 men who'd built walls so high between them that neither knew how to take the first step. "Come in," Errol finally said. Inside, the house looked the same as Elon remembered from childhood. The same couch, the same kitchen table, even the same smell, coffee, and old books. "I made sandwiches," Errol said, pointing to a small cooler by the door. "The same kind we used to take. Peanut butter and jam." Elon smiled, a real smile. You remembered?" "I remember everything." They drove in silence toward the Magaliesberg Mountains, the same route they'd taken decades ago. The roads had changed, more buildings, more traffic, but the mountains themselves stood unchanged against the bright blue sky. Errol parked in the same spot they'd always used, a dirt pullout overlooking the valley. The city of Pretoria sprawled in the distance, much larger than it had been in 1980, but the view still took Elon's breath away. They spread a blanket on the hood of the car, just like old times, though now both of them groaned a bit getting up there. "My back isn't what it used to be," Errol said with a weak laugh. "Join the club," Elon replied. They sat in awkward silence, eating the sandwiches. The peanut butter tasted exactly the same. Elon hadn't had one in years. "So," Errol started, then stopped. "Yeah," Elon said. More silence. Then Errol pointed up at the sky. It was still daylight, but he pointed anyway. "See up there? In a few hours, when it gets dark, you'll be able to see them." "See what?" "Your satellites, Starlink. They cross over here every night around 9 o'clock, like a string of pearls moving across the sky." Elon turned to look at his father. "You watch them?" "Every night," Errol said, his voice thick. every single night since they started appearing. I sit in my backyard and watch your satellites cross the stars we used to look at together." Elon felt something crack inside his chest. "I thought," Elon's voice broke, "I thought you wouldn't care. I thought you'd never see them." "How could I not care?" Errol turned to face him, tears streaming down his weathered face. "You're my son, and I've watched every launch, read every article. I know more about SpaceX than probably half your employees. I watched it all from a distance because I thought that's all I deserved." "Dad, I'm sorry." The words tumbled out of Elon. "I'm sorry I said those things in that interview. I'm sorry I shut you out. I'm sorry I let pride and hurt and stupidity steal 30 years from us." Errol reached over and grabbed his son's hand. His grip was weaker than Elon remembered, the hand more fragile. "I'm sorry too," Errol said. "I made mistakes, terrible mistakes. I wasn't the father you needed me to be after the divorce. I got wrapped up in my own life and let you drift away. And then so much time passed that I didn't know how to reach you anymore." They sat there, two grown men holding hands on the hood of a car, crying like children. "Well, I've watched every launch," Errol repeated. "Every single one. When Falcon Heavy went up with your car, I sat here on this very mountain and watched until I couldn't see it anymore. And I thought, that's my boy. That's my son touching the stars, just like he always dreamed." Elon looked up at the sky, imagining the satellites that would soon cross overhead. "I put those there, thinking you'd never see them, thinking you wouldn't care." "I've been seeing them all along," Errol whispered. "I've just been seeing them alone." As the sun began to set, painting the African sky in oranges and purples, they stayed on the hood of the car, talking, really talking, for the first time in decades. Errol told Elon about the drawer full of newspaper clippings, about the letters he'd written but never sent, and about the heart attack 3 years ago that he'd survived alone, too proud to call. Elon told his father about the dark times, the failed rocket launches, the moment Tesla almost died, the nights he'd almost called but couldn't bring himself to dial. When true darkness fell, they watched in silence as a string of bright dots moved across the sky. 50 Starlink satellites in perfect formation. "There they are," Errol said softly. "My son's stars." "Our stars," Elon corrected. "You taught me to dream about them." Errol pulled a bundle of envelopes from his jacket pocket, dozens of them, worn and yellowed. "What are those?" Elon asked. "Letters," Errol said. "I wrote you one after every major achievement. After Zip 2, after PayPal, after the first Falcon 9 landing, after everything. I just never had the courage to send them." With shaking hands, Elon took the stack. By the light of their phone flashlights, he began to read. The first letter was dated 1999. "Dear Elon, I read about Zip 2 in the newspaper. I wanted you to know I'm proud." Elon read letter after letter, his hands trembling, tears falling on the pages. Years of pride, regret, love, and pain, all preserved in his father's handwriting. When he finished the last one, he looked at Errol. "Why didn't you send them?" "Because I thought you'd throw them away, like you threw away your memories of us." "I never threw them away, Dad." Elon's voice broke. "I buried them because they hurt too much." They sat in silence, watching more satellites cross the sky. Then Errol's hand went to his chest. His breathing became labored. "Dad?" Elon's voice filled with panic. "Well, I'm okay," Errol gasped. "Just my heart." "We're going to the hospital. Now." Errol started to protest, but Elon was already helping him down from the car, already calling for an ambulance, already refusing to let this first Saturday be their last. Pretoria Heart Hospital, November 2023. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Elon paced the emergency room hallway. His phone buzzed constantly. Messages from Jennifer, from Tesla executives, from SpaceX engineers, but he silenced them all. A doctor emerged from behind the curtain, her face serious but calm. "Mr. Musk," she said, looking at Elon. "That's my father," Elon said quickly, pointing toward the bed. "I'm his son. How is he?" "His condition is stable for now, but we need to run more tests. Has he been under any stress lately?" Elon almost laughed. "He just spent the day with me for the first time in 30 years. That might count as stress." The doctor didn't smile. "His heart is weak, much weaker than it should be. When was his last cardiac evaluation?" "I don't know," Elon admitted, shame flooding through him. "I don't know anything about his medical history." The doctor made notes on her tablet. "We'll need to keep him overnight for observation, possibly longer." "Whatever he needs," Elon said. "Cost doesn't matter. I want the best cardiologists in the world. I'll fly them in, if necessary." "Mr. Musk," the doctor said gently, "your father doesn't need doctors from around the world. He has a good team here. What he needs is rest and reduced stress." She walked away, leaving Elon standing in the hallway, the richest man in the world who couldn't buy his way out of this problem. He pulled back the curtain and entered his father's room. Errol lay in the hospital bed, connected to monitors that beeped steadily. He looked small and frail in the thin hospital gown, so different from the strong father Elon remembered from childhood. "I'm sorry," Errol whispered. "I ruined our first Saturday." Elon pulled a chair close and sat down, taking his father's hand. "You didn't ruin anything. I'm just glad I was there. If you hadn't been—" Errol didn't finish the sentence. They both knew how it would have ended. "How long?" Elon asked quietly. "How long have you been having heart problems?" Errol looked away. 3 years, since 2020. "The heart attack Kimball told me about." "You knew?" "He mentioned it once. Elon's voice cracked. "I told myself you were fine, that you didn't need me checking on you, but I was lying to myself." "I didn't want you to know," Errol said. "I didn't want you to come out of obligation or pity." "So you waited until you were dying to ask me for 12 Saturdays?" Errol's silence was answer enough. Elon stood up, anger and grief flooding through him. "What were you thinking? What if I'd said no? What if I'd been too busy? You could have died without ever telling me." "Then I would have died knowing I tried," Errol said quietly. "But I'd have died wondering if you still loved me at all." The words hit Elon like a physical blow. "Dad, He sat back down, his anger dissolving into something deeper. "I never stopped loving you. I was just so angry for so long that I didn't know how to find my way back. And now?" "Now I'm here," Elon said firmly. "See, and I'm not going anywhere." 3 weeks later, Elon stayed in Pretoria for 3 weeks, the longest he'd been in one place without working in over a decade. He rented a suite at the Intercontinental and turned it into a makeshift office. But for the first time in his life, work came second. He visited his father every day in the hospital, then later at home when Errol was discharged. He flew in specialists from Johns Hopkins and the Mayo Clinic. The best cardiac surgeons examined Errol, reviewed his tests, and adjusted his medications. But the real healing came from the hours they spent together. Errol showed Elon the drawer full of newspaper clippings, decades of articles carefully cut and saved. Your PayPal sold for billions. Tesla revolutionizes electric cars. SpaceX successfully lands rocket. Elon Musk, Time Person of the Year. I kept every single one, Errol said, his voice shaking. Even when we weren't speaking, even when you said those things about me in interviews. I kept them all because you're still my son. You'll always be my son. Elon held the clippings with trembling hands, seeing his entire career preserved in his father's handwriting. Dates noted in the margins, passages underlined. One article from 2012 about the Dragon spacecraft docking with the International Space Station had a note in the margin. Elon did it. He actually did it. I'm so proud. I thought you didn't care, Elon whispered. I cared about everything, Errol replied. I just didn't know how to show you. December 2023. The second Saturday. When Errol was strong enough, they had their second Saturday. This time in Errol's garage, the same garage where young Elon had learned about engines. The tools were older, rustier, but they were still there. Together they worked on Errol's old Toyota, the same car they'd repaired together 40 years ago. Hand me the wrench, Errol said, and Elon smiled at the familiar words. The bigger one? Elon asked. You remember. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, their hands greasy with oil, just like the old days. I built rockets because you taught me engines were magic, Elon said suddenly. Errol looked up from under the car. What? Every time I design a new Raptor engine or work on Starship, I think about these Saturdays. About you teaching me that everything works if you understand how the pieces fit together. Elon wiped his eyes with his sleeve. I built SpaceX on the foundation you gave me in this garage. Errol slid out from under the car, oil streaking his face. You built SpaceX because you're brilliant. That's all you, son. No, Elon said firmly. It's us. Everything I've done, the good parts anyway, started here, with you. They embraced, two men covered in grease and tears, finally saying the things they should have said decades ago. January 2024. The third Saturday. For the third Saturday, they walked through Pretoria, visiting places from Elon's childhood. They stood outside Waterkloof House Preparatory School, where young Elon had been bullied mercilessly. I should have done more, Errol said, staring at the building. I should have protected you better. You did what you could, Elon replied. You taught me to be tough, to keep going even when things were hard. I hated it then, but it made me who I am. They walked to the library where Elon had spent countless hours reading encyclopedias, escaping into books when the real world was too painful. I read the entire Encyclopedia Britannica here, Elon said. Twice. I know, Errol said. The librarian called me once, worried you were spending too much time alone. I told her to let you be, that you were building something in that brilliant mind of yours. You were right. They stopped at the old corner store where Errol used to buy them cold drinks after working in the garage. Is it still here? Elon asked. Let's find out. The store had changed owners, been renovated, it modernized, but it was still there. They bought 2 Coca-Colas in glass bottles and sat on the curb, just like they used to. These taste better here, Elon said. Everything tastes better when you're home, Errol replied. February 2024, the fourth Saturday. This time, Errol flew to Texas. Elon picked him up personally at the airport and drove him straight to SpaceX headquarters in Boca Chica. Welcome to Starbase, Elon said as they approached the massive facility. Errol stared in wonder at the gleaming Starship rockets standing like silver giants against the sky. You built this? Errol whispered. We built this, Elon corrected. Those Saturday lessons in the garage. This is where they led. Elon gave his father a personal tour. They climbed inside Starship, stood in the engine bay. I met the engineers who were making interplanetary travel possible. This is Raj, Elon introduced a young engineer. He's leading the heat shield development. Raj shook Errol's hand enthusiastically. Mr. Musk, your son talks about you all the time. He credits you with teaching him everything about engineering. Errol looked at Elon in surprise. You do? Elon nodded. I tell them about the garage, about the engines, about you teaching me that if you want to touch the stars, you first need to understand what you're standing on. Errol's eyes filled with tears as he looked around at the massive facility, the hundreds of engineers, the rockets that would carry humans to Mars. I'm so proud of you, he said. I know, Elon replied. I finally know. March through September 2024. The middle, Saturdays. The fifth Saturday was quiet. No mountains, no rockets. Just Errol's living room in Pretoria, old home videos playing on the television. Elon watched himself as a child. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, family dinners. His mother May was there, young and beautiful, his siblings running around, and Errol, looking happy in a way Elon had almost forgotten. I didn't know these existed, Elon said, mesmerized by the footage of his 7-year-old self opening presents. Your mother sent them to me after the divorce, Errol said. I've watched them 1,000 times. They sat together watching the ghost of their family, back when everything was whole. In April, the 6th Saturday arrived with an uncomfortable conversation. Tell me about your children, Errol said. Elon tensed. Oh, what about them? How many Saturdays do you spend with them? The question landed like a punch. Elon looked down at his hands. Not enough, he admitted quietly. Don't make my mistakes, Errol said, his voice gentle but firm. Don't let them grow up seeing you as a stranger who sends money and gifts, but never shows up. I did that to you, and it cost us 30 years. I don't know how to be both, Elon confessed. I don't know how to be a father and change the world at the same time. You don't change the world for strangers, son, Errol said. You change it for the people you love. What good is Mars if your children don't know their father? The words haunted Elon for weeks. By the 7th Saturday in May, something had shifted. Elon brought 3 of his younger children to meet their grandfather. Errol sat on his porch as the kids explored the garage, touching tools, asking questions, just like their father had decades before. This is where Dad learned about engines? One asked. This is where we learned together, Errol said, winking at Elon. Elon watched his father teaching his children, saw the same patience and wonder he remembered from his own childhood. 3 generations under one roof, separated by decades but connected by curiosity. The 8th Saturday in June brought an unexpected reunion. May Musk came to Pretoria. Elon had arranged it carefully, asking both parents separately if they'd be willing to share a meal together. For their son's sake. The lunch was awkward at first. Errol and May hadn't been in the same room in over 20 years, but as they shared stories about young Elon, his stubbornness, his brilliance, or his impossible questions, the old wounds began to feel less sharp. He asked me once if humans could live on stars, May said, laughing. Not planets, stars. He was 5 years old. I told him stars were too hot, Errol added. He spent the next week designing a cooling suit out of cardboard and aluminum foil. I still have it, May said softly. They looked at each other, really looked, for the first time in decades. We did something right, Errol said. Look at what he became. We did, May agreed. Elon sat between his parents, feeling something he hadn't felt since he was a child. Whole. The 9th through 11th Saturdays blurred together in a montage of healing. In July, they visited Cape Town beaches, where Errol taught Elon's children to skip stones, the same way he'd taught Elon. In August, they toured Johannesburg museums, walking through exhibits about South African history and innovation. In September, they simply sat on Errol's porch, drinking coffee, watching the sun set over Pretoria, talking about everything and nothing. During these months, Elon began to change. His colleagues noticed it. He blocked out Saturdays permanently on his calendar, marked them as untouchable. He started leaving the office at reasonable hours occasionally. He called his children more often. One evening, he posted on X, "Spent the day with family," reminded that the most important work happens away from screens. #what really matters. The post went viral. People speculated about what had changed the famously workaholic billionaire. Only Errol knew. October 2024. The 12th Saturday. 1 year had passed since the phone call. 12 Saturdays completed. 12 months of healing. Errol suggested they return to where it all began. The Magaliesberg Mountains. They drove the familiar route, older now but somehow lighter. The weight of 30 years had lifted, replaced by something precious and new. They parked in the same spot and climbed onto the hood of the car, slower than before, laughing at their creaking joints. The sun set in brilliant oranges and purples. The stars began to appear. "Dad," Elon said quietly, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" Elon pulled a wrapped package from his backpack. "I brought you something. Not money. Something else." Errol unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a frame containing 2 photographs side by side. The first was the old picture from 1980, 8-year-old Elon and young Errol at the airfield, holding hands. The second was new, taken just last month. See 77-year-old Errol and 53-year-old Elon in the same pose, standing in the same garage, both smiling. Below the photos, a small plaque read, "Some distances are measured in miles. The most important ones are measured in time." And beneath that, in Elon's handwriting, "Dad, you taught me to reach for the stars. Thank you for teaching me to come back to Earth. Love, Elon." Errol held the frame with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. "It's perfect," he whispered. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars emerged. Then Elon saw them, the Starlink satellites crossing overhead in their familiar pattern. "There they are," Errol said, pointing, "right on time." But this time, instead of watching alone, he was watching with his son. "Dad," Elon said suddenly, "I need to tell you something else, something important." Errol turned to look at him, concern crossing his face. "When you called me last year and asked for 12 Saturdays, why then? Why that specific moment?" Errol was quiet for a long moment. The stars wheeled overhead. The satellites marched across the sky. "Because," Errol finally said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I had to tell you something too. Something I should have told you from the beginning." "What?" Errol took a deep breath, reaching into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. Medical documents. "When I called you last October," Errol said, his hands trembling, "I'd just come from the doctor. They'd given me 6 to 12 months to live." Elon's world stopped. "What?" "My heart condition was terminal, son. That's why I asked for 12 Saturdays. That's why I asked for a year." Errol's voice broke. "I wasn't asking for 12 random days. I was asking for every Saturday I had left before I died." And that was the end of this story. A father who was dying asked for 12 Saturdays instead of $1 billion. A son who almost said no, but chose love over everything else he was building. And together, they proved that the most valuable things in life can't be bought. They can only be lived. We'd love to know, where are you listening from? Drop your country or city in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more emotionally powerful stories like this one. And don't keep this to yourself. Share this video with your friends and family. Spread kindness and awareness. Remind someone today that time is the greatest gift we can give to the people we love. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next story.